Thor: The Dark World is the follow-up to the 2011 film Thor, a movie in which Thor went to Earth. And that's pretty much all that happened. Oh sure, there were a few fights here and there, and Loki's character got fleshed out a whole hell of a lot more than the fucking title characters did, but other than that, Thor just went to Earth. That was pretty much it. Because this wasn't a movie. It was a precursor in-joke advertisement for another movie that wasn't even in the same franchise. Well, what the hell did you make me sit through this for, then? Why didn't you just introduce Thor and the Avengers, which you pretty much did anyway? So anywho, no, you know what? This is what pisses me the fuck off about that bullfuck Marvel Cinematic Universe bullfuck, because no one involved in the introduction films actually cared if they were good or not. Because that's not what they were for. They were to set up the Avengers, which we don't fucking need 5 fucking feature films to do. Usually when a filmmaker kicks off a new superhero film, it's to explore that character and where you can go with his or her story. They don't make it to kick off a completely different franchise and use this as a launching pad for one fucking character in that different franchise. Making these movies was not an artistic decision. It was a business decision, because the returns on 5 feature films that introduce characters is a lot more than you would get by making one feature film and introducing them all there. This isn't art, it's just business. The Dark Knight trilogy was art, even the bad one. Iron Man 3 was art, the only good one. This is business. Exploitative, laissez-faire capitalistic business. It's a fucking product. There is no integrity to it. It's the difference between Christopher Nolan and a fat, sleazy businessman in a suit looking for more noxious ways of raping your wallet. Fuck you, Hollywood. One character is not a justification for making an entire feature film. Fuck, at least when a robber robs me, they have the decency to break into my house and do it. They do not expect me to pay my own way to their house and throw fists full of money at them. I know you were all disappointed that I'm reviewing The Dark World before I review the first Thor movie, so there you go. There's your fucking Thor review. Sorry about that. Anyway, I liked this movie. So, like I said back there and all that somewhere, these movies were never meant to be movies. They're more like pilots for a TV show, except fuck you, this is a film. But now that The Avengers is over and is a cemented cultural phenomenon anyway, there's no real reason to promote it any further, and so films like Thor are finding themselves in the awkward position of having to be franchises on their own now, which they were never really designed to be. Now, I feel that this fucking studio has had way too much fucking control over these fucking movies thus far. The Avengers had elements in it that could have made for a good film if it didn't have more demands and studio notes than I've ever seen in my fucking life, but this movie didn't seem to have that. Now that this stupid cinematic universe has been set up and the Avengers pretty much sells itself, the studio didn't seem to care that much what they do with this. It's just a filler now between the Avengers and the time the Age of Ultron is released, which I think helps this out. For one thing, the stupid fanboy referencing has been severely pared down. It's still there, but not as much as the rest. The only time I found myself lost was at the end credits scene where I had no idea who was talking or what the significance of any of this was, but it's an after-credits scene, so who gives a shit? For the most part, this is its own self-contained film, which is a first for the Thor franchise. So how does it fare on its own? Better than I would have expected. It's not great by any means. For one thing, the story is shit. And by shit, I mean really shit. But like any good entertainment film, the shit story facilitates things that I do like. In the first Thor, we had the Frost Giants, who wanted to freeze everything because they're Frost Giants. What else are they going to do? Now we have the Dark Elves, who want to make everything in the universe dark because they're Dark Elves. What else are they going to do? I suspect that in Thor 3, the antagonists are going to be short aliens whose life's mission it is to make everything in the universe short. So to accomplish the goal of turning all the lights off, the Dark Elves have this crap called ether, which will make everything dark, or it destroys everything in the universe. I don't know, it never really clarified that point. There's also a time in which a bunch of dimensional holes open up, and they have to get the ether through that in order to make this work, or something. You know, I can't really remember the specifics of the external plot since it was so stupid and boring. Anyway, they tried doing this, but the Asgardians kicked their asses, took the ether, and buried it somewhere. Well, fast forward to centuries later, and we have the event again where several planets are aligning and their dimensions are getting merged in certain spots, so the Dark Elves can now try again. The Asgardians think they're all dead for reasons that I can't remember, but it turns out that they're alive for reasons that I can't remember. And here's another problem. The villain. Remember in my Amazing Spider-Man mini-view where I said that no one would be talking about the Lizard in 5 years, and it turns out that no one was even talking about the Lizard in 2 years? Well, please. No one involved in this movie gave this villain any credit at all. He's pretty much abandoned in favor of Loki about midway in anyway, almost as if these guys know they have a lame duck villain on their hands. Anywho, in present day, her stumbles upon the ether by going through one of these portals in the most convenient happenstance ever witnessed, and Thor takes her to Asgard to help her out. Yes, this was a terrible contrivance, but oddly enough, this is one of the things I like about this film. Unlike the first Thor, and even the Avengers to a large degree, I felt that everything in this screenplay was there for a reason. Yes, you had to load this useless love interest woman up with invincible magic elixir blood to get her to be important in the story, but at least she is. She's basically carried around like a bag on Thor's shoulder the whole time, but she's there for a reason. So as this is happening, we also get to deal with the aftermath of everything Loki did in the Avengers. As Loki is pretty much the only good character in almost all of these movies, it should come as no surprise that this is where the movie starts getting interesting. Loki has to explain himself to his father and to his mother as well, and I'm happy to say that they handled this great. Remember that Peter Weller bullshit in Star Trek Into Darkness where he basically said, "Mwahaha, I was never gonna spare your crew. Hell, I was even gonna pee on their faces when I was done blowing the shit out of them because I'm evil. Mwahaha." Well, here's what Loki has to say for himself.
Wherever you go, there is war, ruin, and death.
I went down to Midgard to rule the people of Earth as a benevolent god. Just like you. I was merely giving truth to the lie that I've been fed my entire life, that I was born to be a king.
A king? A true king admits his faults. What of the lives you took on Earth?
A mere handful compared to the number that Odin has taken himself.
See, a good villain doesn't revel in his bad guyness. They act like people, and they have some internal logic and conflicts behind what they do, apart from just, I want to kill everyone because I'm a dick like that. Loki is basically saying, I'm doing what I was apparently supposed to do. Be a king. I haven't done anything that you haven't done, Pops. Sure, some died, but most would have eventually followed me. This is how we rule. Loki's function as the villain has always sucked in these movies, but his motivations behind why he's doing all of this has always been good. And I feel that this scene only adds to more of that good. I also really liked that scene in the holding cell.
Your father...
He's not my father!
Then am I not your mother?
You're not.
As he was talking to his mother, and she questions his feelings for her, you could see the conflict in his face and his tone. He loves his mother, but hates the way he's treated in this family. So, far from finding help, the Asgardians take one look at her and decide that they don't want anything to do with this. But then they discover that she's infected with the ether and probably doesn't have much time left to live. Well, unfortunately, the ether acts as a big beacon for the Dark Elves, and so they come flying to Asgard equipped with fancy cloaking devices. Usually this would mean getting the drop on them immediately, but to my surprise, this is where things start getting dynamic. Okay, so Heimdall is doing his usual looking job when all of a sudden he starts running. And as this big invisible ship is flying there, he's like, "Oh, hell no, you're not fooling me. Fuck you. Fuck you. I don't care if you're big." Damn, that didn't fool him at all. That was the first moment of exhilarated glee that I felt about all this, and thankfully, it wasn't the last. In fact, I don't have anything to complain about on the whole action front. It all feels essential to the admittedly stupid-ass story, and things get very dynamic. In addition to having conventional weapons, the Dark Elves also have these things that turn a soldier into a big-ass hulking super soldier, and they have grenades that suck you up into a big black hole vortex. I have never seen anything like this before, and I really liked the physics of all of this combat in general. The big hulking soldier dude lets all of the prisoners out of the super jail except for Loki, and the Dark Elves fight their way to her? Whom they need in order to retrieve the ether. There's yet another dynamic switcheroo here that I didn't see coming, and this whole thing ends with Thor and Loki's mother dying, which, I'll be damned, actually ties into something. The last time she and Loki talked, he basically told her she wasn't his mother, and now it turns out that those will be the last words he will ever say to her. Holy hell. They actually put an emotional conflict in all of this that the two main characters are now going to have to deal with. It wasn't a great emotional conflict. It would have been nice if we cared about their mom or knew who she was, but it's a conflict. It's real, quantifiable effort, and I really appreciated that. So now they have two goals: destroy the ether before the dimension thing happens, and keep her alive in the process. Thor relays a plan to his father to get her to the Dark Elves so that they can extract the ether and destroy it, but Odin refuses, stating that if he fails, the Dark Elves will have a weapon of mass destruction. Odin forbids Thor from going ahead with the plan and instead decides to fight. So Thor and his comrades organize an insurrection to get her to the Dark Elves in order to save Asgard and the universe, and Loki's grief is what motivates him to join them as well. I loved this. You know what this reminded me of? It reminded me of Star Trek III, where the crew had to rebel against the Federation in order to steal the Enterprise, aka the best part of that movie. This was a joy to behold, as all these characters risk their titles and standing and fight against Asgard for the good of Asgard. And believe it or not, I actually kinda started caring about these guys as they were all doing their thing. Also like Star Trek III, this is a very simple go here plot as Loki escorts them to his secret opening between realms, but as we're going here, we see a lot of good stuff too. While it's great to see Loki and Thor talk to each other as princes of the universe, we also get to see them talk to each other as brothers.
Well, whatever you're doing, brother, I suggest you do it faster.
Shut up, Loki.
You must have missed something.
I didn't. I'm pressing every button on this thing.
No, don't hit it. Just press it gently.
I am pressing it gently. Stop working!
That whole thing just made me smile. For the first time in any of these films, I felt like I was getting to know these two on personal terms rather than external ones. They eventually make it to the passage, and we get even more of this, only this time the mother's death comes into play, and the two hash out a lot of important things.
Son of Odin.
No, not just of Odin. You think you alone were loved of Mother? You had her tricks, but I had her trust.
Trust. Was that her last expression? Trust? Will you let her die?
What help were you in your cell?
Who put me there? Who put me there?
You know damn well! You know damn well who!
Yeah, that was good. Honestly, truly good. I still think the most interesting part of these two in the Avengers is when they were just talking to each other like people, and we get a lot of that here. Yes, it's more of the same, but I thought the Avengers needed more of this anyway. They eventually make it to the Dark Elves, and a plan unfolds which utilizes both Thor and Loki's unique abilities and strategies. Yet another indication that everything is in this screenplay for a reason and a use. It all ends with the ether being retrieved by the Dark Elves and Loki having a noble death scene. Or so we're supposed to think, but no one really should have done that anyway. Especially Thor. Come on, dude, Loki's an illusionist. Ordinarily, I would say spoiler alert here, but if you think they're going to kill off one of their most popular characters in a C-list movie, you're dreaming. So Thor and her find a portal on this world and make it back to Earth, and they join up with a B story that was going on with the human characters, which I forgot about until now because fuck those characters. The Dark Elves are coming to Earth to set off their ether, and this group has to stop them. Now, you remember in Iron Man 3 where I said that the climax filled me with exhilarated glee? Well, I'll be fucked if I didn't have a similar reaction to this. The fight takes place as all the worlds are merging, so everything happens in a whole bunch of different dimensions that pop up in unexpected places. This provides a shitload of variety and fun. Hell yeah. The whole thing is just dynamic as hell. I swear, the creative forces behind these films are really getting a lot better at this. What took me out of the climax of the Avengers is that you had about 6 people versus a seemingly inexhaustible supply of aliens. There was no way to know what the remainder of the threat was, so we're basically just watching them punch at things in a run-of-the-mill way until something happens that resolves the thing, and that's boring to me. This climax is just this crazy physics puzzle where the humans use this machine to transport the elves somewhere else. They accidentally get transported somewhere else themselves. Thor and his weapon are popping in and out of dimensions. This is what I call a fun ride. Eventually, the ether and the baddie are both defeated, and the movie ends in a way that seems to have divided moviegoers. Some thought it was fine and interesting, and others thought that it took away from the bonding scenes that came before. I personally think that this will either work or not based on where they go with it, so we'll just have to see. So, overall, I am forced to conclude that Thor: The Dark World was good. So, Matthew, did you think this was as good as Iron Man 3? No, you are comparing a good hearty meal to a pudding cup. But it was a good pudding cup. I ate it and went yum. It was not, say, an empty pudding cup where upon opening it you simply see words at the bottom which read, "Get ready for the real pudding cup." Then upon receiving that pudding cup, you realize it's also empty with the words that read, "Isn't this a good pudding cup?" It was a yummy, tasty... You know what, I don't even like pudding. Why the hell am I using that as an analogy? This is not Iron Man 3 good. It's not even in the same league. This is Star Trek 3 good, which is not very, but there's enough stuff in here to make it worth watching, at least. I was going to end this by saying that I'm not going to run out and buy this, but I might actually do that. I wouldn't mind watching this again at all if I had a weekend and nothing to do and just wanted to enjoy something in my day. It's easy to recommend these films to people who are already fans of Marvel, but I would recommend Thor: The Dark World to any fans of fun. The big hulking dude lets all of the prisoners out of the super jail except for Loki, and the Dark Elves fart there. There you go, guys. There's an outtake.